that this case is actually taking place in the first place.
And thank you. And and
audio just kicked in. Sorry.
We had audio problems?
Yeah, go ahead. You're good. But revisit the Poe case. The reason why... Okay, so welcome, everybody. Sorry for the delay on the audio, but we are here. We're catching up right now. Audio glitch. Thanks for the call in to let us know. But we're talking about the lawsuit for the Poe case, and we're talking about a person who wanted to have an abortion, but because of the laws in Kentucky, it prevented them. And the lawsuit begins with the words, because it was inconvenient for them to get to have to leave the state to go get an abortion for a child. We have identified that there was no incest involved in this case, and we've identified that there's no medical conditions that would have caused the loss of life to the person.
No.
So
or no rape as well.
Right. So come back in on that, Nancy, and I apologize. And we have special guests on here. We have Richard Nelson from the Commonwealth Policy Center and Senator Stephen Meredith joining us. Senator Meredith.
Nancy Tate is in studio with us.
And Nancy Tate is also in here. They are both the chair for the caucus from the Senate and from the House of Representatives for Right to Life.
Or for pro-life. It's
or
called
pro-life.
the
Pro-life
caucus. That's correct. Yeah, yeah, that's correct.
I'll get it right one of these days.
That's all right. Yeah.
But go ahead.
So the Mary Poe, basically, the challenge by the ACLU and Mary Poe alleges that the two Kentucky abortion laws, the trigger law and then also the heartbeat bill, violates the state constitutional rights to privacy and self-determination. So the lawsuit was filed in the Jefferson County Circuit Court, and the first hearing was heard on November 8th. The Jefferson County Circuit Court with Justice Tracy Davis presiding. Now, the intent for this is to make it a class action lawsuit. And
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and which means this law's been in place for 2 years, two plus years. Well, it's been in effect for 2 years
since 2022.
And we said this earlier, but because of audio problems, I want to revisit for just a second. It's really the ACLU's attempt to relitigate Roe versus Wade, and the Supreme Court has already ruled on that. And to me, it seems like they're just trying to...
National Supreme Court.
The National Supreme Court, yes. The U.S. Supreme Court has already ruled that it needs to go back to the states. And when they said that they meant the state legislatures, the representatives of the people, they didn't mean back to the states' courts.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Because they've already been down this trail.
That's right.
This is, to me, it would go through the same exact circuit that it did last time.
And then I believe when we did the amendment to try to amend the Constitution to I guess, make this...
the Constitution was just to clarify the language that there is no right to an abortion in the Constitution.
Right, and currently it's being upheld, though, based off of a Kentucky Supreme Court ruling that says it is still unconstitutional to have an abortion.
Well, that's not necessarily the case. What the Kentucky Supreme Court did was they pushed it back down, and they said that that organizations did not have the right to file the lawsuit, that an individual had to file the lawsuit.
Okay.
Right.
And now here we are.
And so for 2 years, they've been
looking for somebody that would file a lawsuit.
That's correct.
And they want to make a class. That's what I was going to say. The class action piece of that doesn't make sense because you would think that if there was a huge class out there, that this would be, that wouldn't have taken 2 years to find somebody to file the lawsuit.
Well, I know we have a short amount of time, so I think it'd be interesting to get Richard's point of view from the Commonwealth Policy Center. Richard, are you there?
I'm here. It's great to be on the program with you all.
Thank you for joining.
Hey, I think something important to note here is that the ACLU, which is filing the lawsuit, and Planned Parenthood, which is the largest, #1 abortion provider in the nation, these were the two organizations that combined, they raised over half of the money to defeat Amendment 2 in 2022.
Right.
Nancy Tate and other pro-life advocates across the state worked together to help Kentuckians to understand why that amendment was so important. And this is relevant to our conversation today because what we are facing with this baby Poe case is Kentucky's own version of Roe v. Wade. There is nothing less than that that's at stake. And you've got the two groups that are in favor of this lawsuit, overturning it, that spent a whole lot of money, and they stand to gain a whole lot of money if Kentucky's abortion laws are overturned. That's important to put out there right at the outset. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of political power involved. I mean, we've got a governor in place right now who doesn't see any reason to oppose abortion. He, in fact, at one point vetoed the Born Alive bill when that came to his desk a few years ago. The reason I brought that in is because of the political angle. You have a very powerful party. The Democratic Party is in favor of this generally, and a lot of money at stake. So look, if we do not want to have to go through Roe v. Wade, which we endured for 50 years at the federal level, it's time right now for Kentuckians to find their voice, to let their voices be heard, and to pray hard. There's a spiritual element to this.
Absolutely.
Nothing less than life is at stake. So we need to pray, and then we need to be prepared to act. And my prayer is that the Kentucky State Supreme Court, when this case arrives before them, will not create a Roe v. Wade here at the state level.
Yeah. Senator Meredith, you want to chime in as well?
Well, I say that we're not surprised by the lawsuit. We always anticipated there'd be a challenge to it. It was just when it was going to happen. Now, and certainly with some recent decisions by our state Supreme Court, there's cause for concern. But if they're truly following the Constitution of Kentucky, then we should be okay. But again, there's been instances where they have not recognized that. So we're all anxiously waiting to see what happens with this court case. And we'll have to deal with the repercussions in. But, people don't look beyond just a single baby's life. It's what impact this has on societies in total. During the Roe v. Wade period, over 63 million babies where lives were terminated, and it has an impact. I heard just today that the tragic killing of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, that 44% of young people feel that was okay. Well, it's because we've made life disposable for a good percentage of our population, and that's why turning this back is such an important cause for us.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it is about the fact that, but the thing about kids, the young people today, that while there are a large percentage that they don't understand the ramifications of what they're even saying, and so they're now at an age to help start making decisions for not just themselves but their community and their state and their country, and we've not done a good job in education, whether it's educating our own children, whether it's educating our own children, or if it's educating in the schools about what the civic duties are, what the that life is important, and the number one thing in the United States and anywhere in the world in God's kingdom is life is important, right? All life is important, and we need to understand that. We need to teach that again.
Yeah, Senator Meredith, you've made a very good point that I think that we need to elaborate on. One of the things that you said was that we need to wait and see. And, so to your point is that that's my concern. My concern is that if we allow, if we as a population, not just us as a legislative branch, because if we as a population take the wait and see approach, then what we could potentially see is these two very important pro-life laws actually be overturned by the Kentucky Supreme Court. And then my concern is that if the Kentucky Supreme Court allows these to be overturned, not to be upheld, then I don't really understand or see that there's anything that as a legislative branch that we can do that they won't overturn or challenge.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've done basically everything that we can think of and passed everything that we could possibly think of as a legislative branch in order to protect the baby in the womb.
And there's a reason that there's a separation between the judiciary and the legislation.
Yeah. Legislative.
The judiciary in recent years, maybe even recent decades, has almost become like a group of lords.
That's
right.
That's right.
Where. And in our structure, it was intended that like the senators would basically be similar to the House of Lords in England, and the representatives would be the House of Commons, and they were supposed to be, one was supposed to represent the state and one was supposed to represent people, and we've made the Senate and the representative of people, just with different rules around them, and so. Like the vacuum that was created there, I think, as the judiciary has stepped in, people realize that, hey, I can become a judge. I can just have, you don't even have to be a good one. And the Democratic Party would appoint a judge, and then that person would ultimately lord over a district. And that's kind of how they've treated it.
So, Richard, from a policy center standpoint, and obviously the amount of research that you guys do from your standpoint, what is the way ahead outside of the caucuses combating this? What is the way ahead? Because to your point, there is going to be millions of dollars funneled into the state that aren't even Kentucky dollars just to fight this, to prove a point nationally.
Yeah, I'll pick up where Representative Tate left off, and the point that she was making is that they have worked for several years passing various pro-life bills. She mentioned it's about 13 different pro-life bills, whether it was the Chemical Abortion Reporting Act or the 6-week heartbeat bill or the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. Several bills have been passed, and they've gone through this process, it's very difficult to pass a bill. You need to have a bill sponsor, it's introduced to a committee, and in committee you have debate, you hear both sides of the issue, and in each of these cases, in order for these bills to become law, they've gone through an arduous process. And again, over a several-year time period, 13 of these bills are on the books, and for a judge to come in and to say, or the state Supreme Court to come in and say, yeah, we think you're wrong, and then to simply write an opinion, that's a punch in the gut to the legislative process. And I need to thank Representative Tate. Thank you for your leadership in the State House.
Yes.
And State Senator Meredith, thank you for your leadership in the State Senate. I applaud both of you. I consider both of you friends and advocates for the unborn. But this is a punch in the gut to not just our friends in the legislature here, but to the process by which we create laws and make laws. And it's a punch in the gut to the people of Kentucky, because there has been a sea change in voter registration here. We used to be a Democrat-dominated state. Democrats dominated the state legislature for years, and it was just 7 years ago that Republicans took control of the House. Well, one of their priorities was to make Kentucky a safe place for the unborn, and they have followed through on that promise. And if we do see the state Supreme Court upend this process and in short circuit the way legislation is made, it's disheartening. I don't know if I have a solution to it. We're talking about it right now, which is great. We're bringing attention to the issue.
That's right.
So I would say, let's keep talking. Let's keep praying. Commend your legislators. Look, for people who are listening to this program, thank your legislators who are pro-life. Thank them for standing and for working hard to restore a sanctity of life ethic in the Commonwealth. Those are a few of the things that can be done.
Yeah. Hey, Richard, you don't mind turning your camera on for us, do you? So we can get you in, people get to know who you are.
I want to turn this back over to Senator Meredith, but if I may,
you got to go. Do you have to go real fast, Richard?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm
good.
I tried to turn it on a number of times, but it just...
I want to, Senator Meredith, are you trying to talk? Okay, so what I want to do... Okay, so what I want to do is, one of the things that Mark said that was very, very important, he said that the U.S. Supreme Court turned this back over to the states.
People of Kentucky, because there has been a sea change in
That's all right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so what Mark made a very good point, and what he said was that the U.S. Supreme Court actually turned this back over to the states, that they said that there was nothing in the U.S. Constitution that guaranteed the right to an abortion. But, I mean, there were long opinions that were written, but they turned it back over to the states in order to for the will of the people.
I think it's the point I made was they turned it over to the state legislatures, not to the state courts.
That's correct.
That's a different thing. And so now they're trying to put it
they're
trying to put it right back in to the to what I'm calling the lords of the manor, right?
That's correct. And as we know, the Attorney General, Russell Coleman, he and his office, their responsibility is to uphold the laws of the
That's right.
that the legislative branch passes. So his Assistant Attorney General, Lindsay Kessner actually spoke about that in front of Justice Tracy Davis, and she's referred to the opinion of the U.S. Supreme Court that they turned it back over to the state legislature. So immediately, because I was in the courtroom, immediately Judge Tracy Davis said, "Hold it right there. It is my responsibility." She referred to the separation of the different branches. And she said, "It is my responsibility to make sure that none of the laws that are passed by the legislative branch are in opposition to the Constitution."
Right.
Right. So, she was quick to say that. She quickly shut down Miss Lindsay, and she didn't want to hear the opinion of the Supreme Court justices, and I agree with her that it is her responsibility to make sure that there's nothing that we pass legislatively that is in opposition to the Constitution. But we know that justices, there's popularists and then there's constitutionalists. And my concern is, as Senator Meredith referred to earlier, is that right now we have a different composition of the U.S. Supreme Court than we had in January. We will have a different composition than we had prior to November.
In the Kentucky Supreme Court.
In the Kentucky Supreme Court, that's correct.
So is this case at a district level right now, or is it at the Supreme Court level?
It's at the circuit court
At the
level.
circuit court
that's
level.
Jefferson
federal.
County Circuit Court, that's correct.
But no, it's state.
State, sorry,
correct.
it's the state circuit court.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
So because it goes state, and then it goes the Kentucky Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, and then it might get into federal district and so on.
Depends, yeah.
That's the route that Roe versus Wade took back in 72 or whatever it was.
Yep.
74.
That's right.
whatever.
Yeah, we're not surprised by this. We knew it was going to come.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
been concerned for many years about the current attitude of our state Supreme Court and the position they take that isn't consistent with the laws that we have passed. And so if they rule in favor of Poe, obviously it's going to be challenged again. We'll probably end up in the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But I think the logic is certainly flawed. If you go back to the original Supreme Court decision, it said it rests with the states, and legislatures make laws, not state Supreme Court. So it's a matter of interpretation, and it'll be challenged. I think be successfully challenged, but I'm hoping that she truly exercises the responsibility of her position. She'll see this is consistent with our Constitution and consistent with the United States Supreme Court's original decision regarding this. So let's wait and see. But if not, I think it's a challenge for our legislature to look at how our justices are selected. And ours is quite antiquated and needs some change. We've talked about this numerously, but this may be the catalyst for it, how we select justice in the future if they do not rule in favor of our legislature.
Yeah. This is another... Go ahead, Steve.
So Richard brought up something earlier, legislators, the time it takes to go through to legislate the laws that you go through. And I know on this podcast, we've talked numerous times about the number of bills that are introduced. It would appear to me, and Rich, you could comment on this as well, but you would almost have to spend an entire legislative session on this in order to really hear all of the arguments for and against in order to hammer out a law related to this. Now, I mean, all the work's gone in there. The number, I think the count was 13, right? But it just seems to me that even in our own legislative sessions, as we do try to broach making sure that we have the right laws on the books, it doesn't seem like you guys have enough time to even cross all the T's and dot the I's with the amount of bills proposed in a legislative session.
Well, I certainly don't want to suggest, though, Steve, that we didn't do the due diligence with any of these laws.
Yeah, I don't want to make sure
that, because they have been. Yeah, we have met with our attorneys. We have met with the Attorney General and his staff to make sure that our laws, when we pass these pro-life laws, because I've been in these chambers, that we make sure that these laws do not do anything that are anti-constitutional.
Right.
We want to make sure that these laws are as solid as possible. So we do the due diligence in the House and in the Senate to make sure that these laws are not anti-constitutional.
And don't disagree with that statement. I guess what I was getting at is the amount of time and the number of bills that are introduced. It takes a lot of energy that you're not going to get to every bill. But if you were to stack them up, and somebody like this Poe argument comes in, and then we've got to go toe to toe all the way up to the Supreme Court. What level does this hit your desk as far as priority?
Oh, absolutely. Since I'm the pro-life caucus chair, I accepted that responsibility 4 years ago. And with that, every session, this is exactly what I've concentrated on solely. Prior to becoming the pro-life caucus chair, this was also one of my primary responsibilities. It's my passion in life.
Yeah, sure.
To protect the baby in the womb and to protect the women and families. Absolutely.
I have to say, I'm at least encouraged that by the fact that the Kentucky State Supreme Court, what was it, 2 years ago when we, not last year, but not this year, but last year in 2023, when we had the amendment, the amendment to clarify, I think
the Constitution,
how the Constitution reflects abortion. I'm at least encouraged by the fact that they did not take that opportunity to just go ahead and ramrod it in to try to make a decision to allow abortion back into Kentucky, that they kicked it back for lack of standing.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm at least encouraged by that, because they could have taken that opportunity just to ramrod what they think should be done in. So I'm at least encouraged that they may not do that again.
Yeah.
But again, it depends on the makeup of the
Supreme Court. Yeah.
each time.
Senator Meredith, would you like to address that? The resignation of the two U.S. Supreme Court justices?
Yeah,
Kentucky
that's certainly a challenge for us, and we're going to have to take a hard look at that. But at this point, I'm more concerned about the composition of our state Supreme Court, because it's
sorry.
more
I said
left.
U.S. I'm sorry. Yeah, Kentucky. Sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's more and more left, and you look at the recent decisions that they have made, it certainly suggests that they don't respect the will of the legislature, that they're going to yield to the executive branch primarily. So again, if they rule against us in this particular case, we have no other option. There's no laws that we can pass because of separation of powers. It will have to be challenged at the state Supreme Court. So I think the course of action we're going to have to take at that point is how we select our justices. Again, I can tell you, you talk to anybody who said we need a legal background, they said we need to change this.
So Senator Meredith, you've said that a couple times now. So can you just maybe explain for those who are listening what the process is currently to select a Supreme Court? They're voted on, right? So what's that process, and what kind of changes are you thinking we might need to do?
Well, most states don't elect their state Supreme Courts. And because we do, we're limited in I guess, judicial due diligence. You don't get the best people. You get people who are interested in running for an office. Other states allow the state Supreme Court to be selected by the executive branch with confirmation from the legislature. And we're limited by districts here in the geographic distance. And maybe there's a time that there's some value to that. But today, I don't think that's the case. What we need is the best jurist we can find to be on the state Supreme Court. So if we turn this over to the executive branch and the confirmation by the Senate, then we could actively recruit judges who have a great record, great history in the court system, and get the very best people to serve in these capacities.
Steve, if you don't mind, could you let Adia Wushner, the executive director for Kentucky Right to Life, in? She would like to join this. Yep.
Gotcha.
All right.
Adia is in the room.
All right,
We
Adia.
have her in the house.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hello.
Yeah, Miss Adia, we've actually gone through and we've talked to great detail about the case and actually the composition of the Kentucky Supreme Court and what our concerns are. But, if you don't mind, I know we're short on time at this point, but if you don't mind, can you express what your concerns are about this case?
Well, and you've probably highlighted every one of them, I'm sure, extremely well, and that's that the court does not is not made up favorably. We know that. We knew with this last election, and that's why the courts matter. But this case can unravel all the work. I'm sitting here, and I just had a meeting going over every piece of legislation that has been passed and the laws of Kentucky and the trigger law. And this isn't about a specific exception anywhere. This is about unraveling the laws of Kentucky, dismantling the work that's been done, and opening the doors to abortions here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Yeah.
This is Kentucky's Roe. If we think back about the Roe case in 1973, which actually started several years beforehand, that was ruled on at the Supreme Court, this is to be a landmark, has possibly been a landmark Kentucky Roe case. And it's so important as we talk about Baby Poe and the mother of the case, Mary Poe, who chose that name as a pseudonym to represent all women of Kentucky. All women now and in the future.
Yeah, so Adia, from your perspective, what action can we take? What do you suggest that the public does? And then, let's start out with the public. What do you want? What do you want from, us communicating about this case?
Right now, and I think we've spoken about this, Representative Tate, communication is extremely important. The public, for the most part, is unaware that this case has even taken place. And when we were at the courtroom and at the courthouse, there was not much attention. Normally, they're all over us to do an interview. There has not been much media attention on this, so we have to move this into the forefront. And then we have
welcome to the Messenger Studios for the Messenger KY Meade County News.
Move to the forefront, and then why we started the petition is so that we have people, by signing the petition, whether they go to our website, they use the QR code, or they send it in, or they have programs at your church where people are signing this petition. The petition is affirming that you stand for life. And right now, because the courts can rule in two areas, and we've talked about this, you can either be a constitutional ruling, or some justices will rule on what they feel is a populist ruling. And we have to make sure that the justices, as we look at this case, know what the people of Kentucky stand for.
That's right.
And they do not want their laws dismantled.
I mean, like we said earlier, it was sent back. Roe was sent back to the state legislature, not to the state courts, and it's important that our state legislature, duly elected by the people of Kentucky, have chosen this route and chosen these laws. So one thing I'd like to make clear, what is currently right now, what is the Kentucky law on abortion?
Yeah, the Kentucky law makes sure that there are no legal abortions in the Commonwealth of Kentucky except for the life of the mother. Okay. And that has been very clearly defined what constitutes the life of the mother.
The life of the mother, not the life
or bodily harm. And bodily harm is going to cause her irreparable damage to her health. That has been defined.
You hear a lot of pro-abortion advocates or abortion advocates say, they talk a lot about, the laws, if the baby died in the womb, they can't take the baby out.
Yeah. Well, right? If the baby dies, then it's not an abortion.
And it's right.
If the baby is dead.
It's right. It's right.
That's exactly right.
And that's all medical information.
Oh, it is. Absolutely, it
comes down to the life of the mother. I'm a nurse. I was an OB nurse, and I still keep my hours and practice. And if you talk to any pro-life OB doctor, they're going to tell you if a mother's life is at risk and she has to go into the delivery to deliver that baby early, whether it is 12 weeks, 16 weeks, or 24 or 32, there is not the thought that we're going in to terminate the life of the child.
Right.
We're going in to proceed with and you know who's going to be in that delivery room? Our neonatologists and a whole team attempting to save the life of the child.
That's right.
Both lives.
It's just not possible.
So at 22 weeks or
Because it's
24
too
weeks,
early.
like you said, 22 weeks, 24 weeks, a baby, the baby needs to be born because sometimes there's a problem with the pregnancy, and it's going to be not just harmful to the mother but harmful to the baby, and so it's best to give it a fighting chance outside the womb and let the doctors help. And I think personally, I know at least one child that was born at 22 weeks, and they have a very normal life. It took a long time for them because
I
they
have
had
a
to finish
child
that.
in that situation.
Yeah.
Little Stevie was prematurely born.
And she's as beautiful and yeah, you know what I'm saying. So
Perfectly healthy.
perfectly healthy, and it's it takes a while. It takes a lot of doctoring to get them through that, but they can be saved, and it's not a dire thing. And there's many people. There's probably more people who are looking for adoption. I think that's another thing that needs to come next is we need to make adoption easier, so that it's not a.
That's a whole nother segment. I would absolutely love
I
to
think so.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess what we boil down to is, what do we believe about a life?
Yeah.
If this is a human life,
It is.
then
So-
our lives to be protected.
Yeah.
What?
You brought up some great points a second ago, and it just flashed me back to something I had on a Christian podcast here. This is Stephen. We will save a lobster with eggs all over its back, and it's illegal if I take that lobster in to harvest the lobster because it's got eggs on it, but we'll put the eggs of a lobster above the life of a human. You know what I mean? And I think another comeback that came back to me that was very interesting, and it was the one about I don't want the government telling me what I can do with my body, but yet we've called it illegal to prostitute. You know what I mean? You cannot just freely go use your body in a sexual manner. It's unlawful.
We are not advocating for prostitution on this radio broadcast.
No, we are not. But I'm just saying that we've got laws that prevent what you can do with your body. And then lastly, I would say this too, that we've already defined what life is, because if you murder a mother with a child in its womb, there are 2 death certificates for the child, and it's a double homicide.
Right.
So the government has already acknowledged that there is a life inside of you, especially.
And that was the fetal homicide bill passed here in Kentucky in 2024. And there were lots of hearings on that. Representative Stanley carried that piece of legislation. And so we've also, the General Assembly and Representative have codified into law what a human life is and defined it, and also then put into law the protections around it. So, and I see Senator Meredith. I mean, this is what they do every day. They've made laws to protect. They make a lot of laws protecting our society. This one is protecting life. And so I hope that the people of Kentucky we will be able to get the word out to sign the petition so that their voice is not just heard by the General Assembly and the voices there, but we have these signatures to advocate and show, yes, the people of Kentucky are pro-life. They have not wavered. They haven't, they've in a post-Dobbs world, they are still just as pro-life as they always were.
Now, I want to come back to the petition, but I think that Senator Meredith needs to leave. Senator Meredith, do you have any closing comments before you leave?
No, I think this is something we're all anxiously waiting, but coming up this next legislative session, certainly interested in working with Adia and you, or Representative Tate, and making sure that we stay the course with this. And I think going forward that our focus has got to be on families and making them more whole and make life a little bit easier for them. That certainly is a pro-life initiative, and that's something I'm very much interested in. But we'll be anxiously waiting to see what's going to happen with this court decision, and we just pray fervently that the right decision will be made.
Well, Senator Meredith, I just want to publicly thank you for being the Pro-Life Caucus Chair for the Senate. I sincerely welcome your passion and your strength and your willingness to serve in this capacity. So thank you very much.
You guys are going to be like the dynamic duo. Wonder Twin Powers activate.
I'm very happy with our representation here in Meade County. I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Richard,
thank with Senator Meredith last year, and to continue, and congratulate you in your position.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Senator, as well as you drop off. I do have a question. I want to turn to Richard. Richard, did you have, you're joining us from the Commonwealth Center. And Adia, if you didn't know, we've got Richard Nelson on from the Commonwealth Policy Center. Richard, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to see if you had any questions for Adia regarding especially some of the research and the work that you've done, and turn it back over to you for just a second to chime in.
Yeah, first of all, Adia, it's good to have you on the program. Good to see you. I want to thank you for your work and your advocacy on behalf of the unborn. I think you nailed it, that this is Kentucky's Roe. One thing I wanted to add to those comments were that the plaintiffs trying to overturn our 6-week the fetal heartbeat bill and the total abortion ban, they're relying on Sections 1 and Section 2 of the Kentucky Constitution. And if you read what the language says, it doesn't say something to the effect that, yeah, we think that women might have a right to abortion or anything like that that alludes to the possibility of abortion. They are looking at language like the right of enjoying and defending their lives and liberties, the right of seeking and pursuing their safety and happiness. That's Section 1. Section 2 goes after absolute and arbitrary power over the lives, liberty, and property of free men exists nowhere in a republic, not even in the largest majority. The reason I bring this up is because the ACLU is they're reading into language, stuff that's not there. And they are hoping to convince the court, in this case, the Jefferson Circuit Court, and possibly if it passes there, it could go up to the state Supreme Court. And if they start inventing language and read into words that really are not there, then we will have a Roe v. Wade. So what Adia is doing, educating people on this issue, Nancy, what you're doing, leading the pro-life caucus in the State House, what State Senator Meredith is doing on the Senate side with the pro-life caucus, this is all important. We need to shed light on what is happening here. We need to expose the strategy that the ACLU has. And as you can tell, I don't have a whole lot of love for the ACLU. Again,
no.
They were the group that helped to defeat a very important Amendment 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which simply said that the Kentucky Constitution does not contain a right to abortion. Yeah. And it would have prevented a Roe v. Wade. But unfortunately, our side was outspent about a 10-to-1 margin. They raised over $10 million.
Yes.
Over half of that was
and money coming in from outside.
It was definitely it was close to $11 million, and it was almost all of it was from outside of Kentucky.
That's correct. Yes. Yep.
And that's why, folks, that's why I mentioned that at the beginning. As you can tell, I'm passionate.
Sure.
But there is a lot of money that the other side has access to, and there's a lot of money to be made if abortion is reinstated in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So we have done, all of us here on this call, we've all been given ourselves, our time and energy and talent, restore a sanctity of life ethic.
Yes.
And we need to keep pressing on. We need to keep educating folks,
That's a
shedding
key.
light on issues. Now, here's one question I have. So what you asked me before, what can be done? Well, here's something that just came to mind, and this would be for State Representative Tate. Nancy, would it be possible to clarify some of the language statutorily in our state constitution? Like, what does it mean to enjoy and defend your life? Because right now, the pro-abortion movement says a woman should be able to defend her life against that child. That is the mentality, and that we've heard phrases like that. But can the state legislature clarify what does it mean to enjoy and defend your life, or what does it mean to have a right of privacy? What does that mean? It's been left to the courts.
Yeah.
But does the state legislature have any way to address that language?
That's a very good point.
That's a very good point. And you're not asking for us to pass a constitutional amendment to do that clarification.
You're making a definition.
Yeah, you're asking us within the law to actually do that. And as Senator Meredith said, I think he referred to that earlier. We'll continue to look at those laws, and I'm sure I can tell Adia's trying to pipe in on that too. But we will continue to do everything that we can to ensure that the definitions are as clear as possible.
Good. And we'd be glad to help at the Commonwealth Policy Center as well.
Well, I think
I was going to add one thing, if we can, as we go forward. We Richard, we all work together on the Yes for Life Amendment, and but one thing that I don't know if I want to call it the other side, the dark side, whatever we want to call it, the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, the Women's Song, and all of these groups do, is I've watched them mount together in such unity and voice. And I think even with this petition, when I was talking to Representative Tate about it, we have got to be one voice, one unwavering voice, because their strength comes in. They pull all the organizations together, and they do it well. I mean, we watched Planned Parenthood go from Kentucky Planned Parenthood to Indiana. Then they became Planned Parenthood of the Great Northwest in Alaska. It was kind of a strange comment. And now it just is Planned Parenthood. The attorneys that they were able to bring in on this case, Representative Tate was in court, they brought in their national attorneys. So they're all in this case. They're bringing all in and all together. And I stress that because we have a lot of issues that we work on, but we need to all be all in a one voice and very strong on this issue for the people of Kentucky.
I think it's interesting that you make that point, and not to cut you off, Mark, because I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of close this out. But you talk about it's gone from this small little thing to this big thing nationally, and folks from outside of our own state are influencing our state, and where are the people of the state to stand to, right? And we have the same problem nationally where people from outside our country are making influence in our country. And you almost have to wonder how much of that is being fueled and fueling into those things to just split our country apart. And I really think that's a great point to make, Adia, is that we as the Commonwealth, the people of Kentucky, must come together to stand against this. And Mark, I turn it back over to you as we look at this entire subject. And,
I want to say one last thing and close this out, but I agree wholeheartedly that the number one thing that we can do as a group of like-minded people is educate others.
That's correct.
Right? We try to do that with our newspaper offerings, of the Meade Truth newspaper offering. We try to do it here in this podcast. We have a website. We work with Richard Nelson of who's online with us right now of Commonwealth Policy Center. We need to continue to take that information. That is, process this, develop our message, and then educate people to that message and understand why we're passionate about this. But I want to thank each and every one of you for continue to take that information that is. So I would like to thank I'd like to thank Nancy for sitting in with us today, Richard and Adia. Thank you for joining us, and I know that I think Senator Meredith is already gone, but thank you, Senator Meredith, for joining us today. And Steve, thanks for getting us all set up and allowing me to host today. And with that, I think that we'll see you all next time.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Blessings. Thank you.
Thank you.